Winning and empty are not the same thing. You got the thing you wanted. Say that back to yourself slowly. So why does it feel like nothing happened? Maybe it was the promotion. Maybe it was the number on the scale. Maybe it was the relationship you chased for years, or the deal you closed, or the stage you finally stood on. You did it. And somewhere in the middle of doing it, you expected a feeling, a landing, a moment where everything clicks and a voice inside finally says, "There, now you can rest." That voice never came. Instead, you felt normal. Maybe even a little hollow. And you didn't tell anyone. Because how do you explain feeling empty about something everyone else assumes should have made you happy? Here's the truth nobody prepares you for. Winning and feeling alive are not the same thing. You can have one without the other. You can stand at the top of something and still feel like you're standing nowhere at all. This isn't an argument against ambition. It's a look at what ambition is actually for. Why the finish line so often feels quiet instead of loud. What that silence is trying to tell you. And how to build a life where winning and feeling full finally point the same direction. Winning fills a scoreboard. It doesn't fill a life. Think about a scoreboard for a second. It tracks one thing: points. It doesn't track whether you were kind on the way there, whether you liked who you became to get the score up, or whether you have anyone to call once the game's over. A scoreboard is honest about a single number, and silent about everything else, which is exactly what most goals are. Honest about the target, silent about the person hitting it. That's why so many people cross a finish line and feel strangely unchanged. Psychologists call this the arrival fallacy. The belief that happiness will simply be waiting once you reach the goal. Studies have found the emotional lift from a big achievement tends to be short-lived, with the mind settling back to baseline far faster than expected. One well-known study followed a group of lottery winners and found that, a year later, they weren't meaningfully happier than people who'd never won a cent. Some even rated everyday pleasures lower than before, because their sense of normal had quietly shifted upward, and ordinary things stopped registering as good. That's not a flaw in those winners. It's a flaw in the story we were sold. We were told the win is the reward. Nobody mentioned the win is just a receipt. It proves something happened, but it doesn't explain what it meant. Don't chase another trophy. Chase a reason. A trophy sits on a shelf and says nothing back to you. It can't tell you why you wanted it. Can't remind you what it cost. Can't comfort you on the nights you wonder if any of it mattered. A reason can do all three. A reason is portable. You can carry it into the room after the applause stops, into the years after the title fades, into an ordinary Tuesday when nobody's watching and there's nothing left to prove. Most people chase the trophy because it's visible, and the reason isn't. You can photograph a trophy. You can't photograph a reason. But a life built entirely around visible things looks good from the outside while feeling emptier on the inside. Because you've been solving for the wrong variable the whole time. So before the next goal, ask yourself something most people skip. Not what do I want, but why do I want it? If the honest answer is, so people stop underestimating me, or so I finally feel like enough, pause there. The goal might still be worth pursuing. But no amount of winning resolves a wound that was never about winning in the first place. You can't outperform a feeling. You can only outgrow it. Meaning is the bridge between winning and feeling alive. Picture two people who reach the exact same outcome. Same title, same income, same recognition. One feels solid, grounded, quietly proud. The other feels anxious and restless, already scanning for the next thing to chase. Same outcome. Completely different experience. The difference isn't talent, and it isn't luck. It's meaning. One person built a bridge between the goal and their actual values. The other jumped straight to the goal and never built anything underneath it. Meaning isn't a bonus feature you add after success. It's the structure that holds success up. Without it, every achievement is a room with no floor. Looks impressive from the doorway. Step inside and there's nothing to stand on. That's why two people can win the identical prize and walk away with two completely different lives. One walks away lighter. The other walks away hungrier, already restless for the next win. Because the last one never actually landed anywhere. Think about real hunger for a second. When you're hungry, almost anything looks like food. A candy bar looks like a meal. But eat only candy and you'll feel fuller for 10 minutes, and worse an hour later. Because sugar spikes fast and drops even faster. Achievement can work the same way on the mind. A win gives you a spike. Recognition, congratulations, a rush of relief. And if it wasn't connected to anything deeper, the spike drops just as fast. And you're hungry again by evening, scrolling for whatever might finally fill you up. This is why some of the most outwardly successful people quietly describe feeling empty right after the biggest moments of their careers. Sports psychologists have documented this directly in elite athletes. who often report confusion, anticlimax, even a strange emptiness in the days right after major competitions, including the ones they won. Years of singular focus suddenly have nowhere to go. The goal is gone, and so is the identity built around chasing it. What's left is someone standing in a quiet room, wondering why winning felt smaller than they imagined. None of this means ambition is the enemy. It means ambition without meaning behaves like sugar. It spikes, it drops, and it leaves you hungrier than before. Here's a question worth sitting with honestly. If you achieved every goal on your list tomorrow morning, would you actually feel done? Or would your mind already be quietly assembling the next list before lunch? Most people, if they're honest, know the second answer is true, which is worth noticing, because it means the goal was never really the destination. It was the excuse to keep moving. There's nothing wrong with movement, but movement without direction becomes motion for its own sake. And that kind of motion is exhausting in a way that never quite explains itself. That's the quiet difference between ambition that fills you and ambition that hollows you out. Ambition that fills you is anchored to something that would still matter even if nobody ever found out about it. Ambition that hollows you out is anchored to being seen achieving it. One survives silence. The other needs an audience to feel real. So ask which one you've been building. Would you still want this win if no one ever congratulated you for it? If the answer is yes, you're standing on solid ground. If the answer's uncomfortable, that discomfort isn't a reason to quit, it's information. It's telling you where the floor is missing. Let's talk about the quiet after the applause. Because almost nobody warns you about this part. You spend months, sometimes years, building toward a single moment. Then the moment happens. People clap. People congratulate you. And within hours everyone's gone back to their lives while you're left standing in the exact same house, with the exact same walls. Except now there's a gap where all that striving used to live. That gap isn't failure. It's the space where meaning was supposed to be waiting. And if you never built it, the space just sits there, quiet and unfilled. Some people panic in that gap, and immediately set a new goal to make the silence stop. That works for a while. It always works for a while. But it's the same pattern repeating. A life spent sprinting from one emptiness to the next, using ambition to avoid ever sitting still long enough to ask what any of it was for. Others do something different in that same gap. They stay in the quiet a little longer than feels comfortable. They let themselves actually notice what they're feeling, instead of immediately drowning it in the next project. And in that discomfort, something useful surfaces. Not despair, clarity. The kind that only shows up once the noise finally stops. Consider two builders, each constructing a house. The first is in a hurry. He wants the house finished so people can see it, and he can move on. He skips the foundation work because foundations are invisible, and invisible work doesn't impress visitors. All his energy goes into what people will notice first: the paint, the windows, the furniture. The house looks finished fast. It also starts cracking quietly, in places nobody sees at first. The second builder is slower. She spends real time on the foundation before anyone can see a single wall. It's unglamorous. Nobody congratulates a person for a foundation. But years later, her house is still standing exactly as built, while the first house needs constant repair just to look presentable. Your life is either of these houses. The paint is the achievement. The foundation is the meaning underneath it. You can have both. Most people simply build in the wrong order, chasing the paint first and hoping a foundation appears later on its own. It rarely does. Foundations have to be poured on purpose. There's a particular kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. You can rest 8 hours and still wake up depleted, because the exhaustion was never physical. It was the exhaustion of chasing something that keeps moving the moment you get close. This happens when your definition of enough is borrowed from somewhere outside yourself. Maybe it came from comparison, watching everyone else's highlight reel and quietly recalibrating your own bar upward every time someone else clears theirs. Maybe it came from somewhere older, a childhood where love felt conditional on performance, so achievement became the only language you trusted for proving your worth. Either way, a borrowed definition of enough can't actually be reached, because it was never really about the goal. It was about a feeling no goal was ever built to provide. The way out isn't to stop achieving. It's to write your own definition of enough, in your own words, based on your own values, and measure your life against that instead of a scoreboard someone else built for a completely different game. Let's be precise about what meaning actually is, because the word gets used so loosely it starts to sound like a vague feeling instead of something you can build. Meaning isn't motivation. Motivation is the spark that gets you moving. Meaning is the reason the movement still makes sense on the days the spark is gone. Meaning shows up in 3 places, and you can check your own life against all 3 honestly. First, does this goal connect to something you actually value? not something you were told to value? Second, does pursuing it require you to become someone you respect, not just someone who wins? Third, does it connect you to other people, rather than isolating you from them in the name of getting there faster? A goal can pass all three tests and still be difficult. Difficulty isn't the enemy here. Emptiness is, and emptiness usually shows up when one of those three questions has been quietly ignored for a long time. Check the goal against the questions before you check it off the list. There's an old image of a man rowing across a lake as fast as he possibly can, never once looking up. He's the fastest rower on the water. He also has no idea where the far shore actually is, because his head's been down the whole time, focused only on speed. Speed feels like progress. It isn't the same thing as direction. A lot of modern ambition looks exactly like this: fast, intense, admirable from a distance, and completely disconnected from any actual destination worth reaching. The rower doesn't need to slow down forever. He needs to look up occasionally, just long enough to confirm the shore he's rowing toward is the one he actually wants. This isn't an argument against speed. It's an argument for checking your direction before you spend another year rowing hard in a straight line toward nowhere in particular. If you've ever felt guilty for feeling empty after a win, let that guilt go. Feeling hollow after achieving something isn't ingratitude. It's not a character flaw. It's information. And information deserves curiosity, not shame. That emptiness is your own mind quietly telling you the goal was disconnected from something deeper. Telling you now, while you still have time to correct course, rather than staying silent for another 10 years while you build an entire life on the same disconnected foundation. It's uncomfortable. It's also one of the most honest signals you'll ever get, and very few people are brave enough to actually listen to it instead of immediately drowning it out with the next goal. Listen to it, not forever, just long enough to ask the question it's actually asking. What was I really trying to prove, and to whom? Here's how you actually start building that bridge. Today, not someday. Take one goal you're currently chasing. Write down the real reason underneath it, the honest one, not the one that sounds good if someone else read it. Then ask whether that reason would still hold up if the applause never came. If it holds up, keep going with confidence. You've already built the floor most people skip. If it doesn't, you don't need to abandon the goal. You need to reconnect it to something that would matter even in silence. Do this with your relationships too. Ask whether you're present in them because you value the people in front of you, or because you're using them as an audience for your own achievements. Do it with your work. Ask whether you're proud of who you're becoming while doing it, not just proud of what it produces. Small, honest checks like these, repeated often, are what quietly turn a hollow life into a full one, long before anyone else notices the difference. One final image before we close. Picture a cup, completely full to the brim and completely tasteless. It looks like exactly what you wanted. Full, complete, nothing left to add. But you lift it to your mouth, and there's nothing in it worth drinking. That's what a win without meaning tastes like. Full on the outside, empty where it counts. Now picture a smaller cup, half full, but every drop means something. You'd choose the second cup every time, if you actually let yourself think it through. Most people never do. They keep filling the tasteless cup higher and higher, convinced more volume will eventually create flavor. It never does. Flavor was never about volume. It was about what you actually poured in. So here's where this leaves you. Keep your ambition. Keep reaching for the next goal, the next milestone, the next version of your life that looks better on paper. None of that is the problem, and none of it needs to stop. Just stop assuming the win itself will do the work only meaning can do. Build the bridge first. Ask why before you ask how much. Let your definition of enough come from you, not from a scoreboard someone else designed for a different life entirely. Because one day you'll reach something you've wanted for years. And when you do, you deserve to actually feel it. Not a hollow congratulations that fades by dinner, but something that stays with you the next morning, and the morning after that. Because it was never just about winning in the first place. There's a version of this pattern that shows up quietly in relationships too, not just careers. You can win an argument and lose the closeness that made the relationship worth having. You can win the upper hand in a negotiation with someone you love, and walk away technically correct and completely alone in the room. Winning was never designed to be the goal of a relationship. Understanding was. And the moment winning replaces understanding as the thing you're chasing, you can rack up victory after victory and still end up further from the person than when you started. This matters because the same instinct that hollows out a career can quietly hollow out a marriage, a friendship, a family. The habit of measuring life in wins and losses doesn't stay contained to one area. It spreads, unless you catch it early and decide on purpose that some parts of your life aren't a competition at all. Nobody needs to lose for you to have had a good day. Sometimes the fullest days are the ones with no scoreboard in them at all. Think about the difference between wanting to be right and wanting to be understood. The person chasing right collects points. Every conversation becomes something to win. Every disagreement a small battle. And even when they win it, something about them feels a little smaller afterward, a little more alone. Because being right in isolation is a strange, hollow kind of victory. Wanting to be understood isn't weaker. It's simply chasing something that actually lasts. Being understood by someone stays with you long after being right has been forgotten by everyone in the room, including yourself. This isn't an argument for never standing your ground. It's an argument for choosing your battles the way you'd choose an investment, based on what it actually returns to you, not on how satisfying the momentary win might feel. Some wins pay you back for years. Others cost more than they give, and you only notice the debt much later, once the relationship has quietly emptied out around you. Here's something worth noticing about people who seem genuinely, quietly content. The kind of content that doesn't need an audience to hold up. It's rarely the people with the most wins. It's almost always the people who stop needing every day to be a win in the first place. They still work hard, still pursue things, but they've separated their sense of worth from their most recent scoreboard. And that separation is what lets them enjoy an ordinary Tuesday exactly as much as a big Friday. This separation doesn't happen by accident. And it doesn't happen by achieving enough to finally feel safe. There's no finish line where achievement automatically produces that safety. It has to be built on purpose, brick by brick, the same way discipline gets built. Except this time you're not disciplining your habits. You're disciplining the story you tell yourself about what your life is actually worth measuring. Ask yourself honestly whether your good days currently depend on winning something. If they do, that's not a personal failure. It's simply the default most of us were handed without ever choosing it. But it can be rebuilt, starting with one uncomfortable but freeing decision. Let an ordinary day be enough on its own terms, without requiring a trophy to justify it. Picture a mountain climber who spent 3 years training for a single summit. The morning finally arrives. She reaches the top, and what she sees, more often than people expect, is fog. Not a clear view stretching for miles, just gray, quiet fog. And a short window before she has to start the descent to stay safe. If her entire 3 years of meaning depended on that view, the fog would feel like a cruel joke. But if her meaning was built along the way, in the training, in who she became to get strong enough for this climb, in the people who helped carry the gear, then the fog barely matters. The summit was never the point. The person she built on the way there was. That's the quiet secret behind almost every story of someone who wins big and still feels solid afterward. They built the meaning during the climb, not at the summit. The summit was just where they found out whether the meaning was real. You don't have to wait for your next big goal to test any of this. Test it today, on something small. Finish a task you've been putting off, and instead of immediately moving to the next thing on your list, pause for 30 seconds and notice how it actually feels. Not how it should feel, how it actually feels. If it feels flat, that's useful information about whether the task was ever connected to something you value, or whether it was just another box to check for someone else's approval. Do this enough times, on small goals, and you start building a kind of internal accuracy. You start being able to tell, before you even chase something big, whether it's likely to feel full or hollow once you arrive. That accuracy is worth more than almost any single achievement, because it changes which achievement you decide to spend your one life pursuing in the first place. So here's where this leaves you. Keep your ambition. Keep reaching for the next goal, the next milestone, the next version of your life that looks better on paper. None of that is the problem, and none of it needs to stop. Just stop assuming the win itself will do the work only meaning can do. Build the bridge first. Ask why before you ask how much. Let your definition of enough come from you, not from a scoreboard someone else designed for a different life entirely. Because one day you'll reach something you've wanted for years. And when you do, you deserve to actually feel it. Not a hollow congratulations that fades by dinner, but something that stays with you the next morning, and the morning after that, because it was never just about winning in the first place. Winning fills a scoreboard. Meaning fills a life. Build both, and for the first time, they'll finally point in the same direction.